All right, welcome back to Fight Talk, where we talk combat sports. My name is Austin Holman, and we're going to talk about the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight today. Who are these guys? I've heard a lot of interesting narratives from people who maybe don't typically follow combat sports on who Jake Paul is and who Mike Tyson is. And I want to clear up those narratives and maybe any other narratives that may be coming into this fight that just necessarily are not true at all. And the first one is the idea about the weight in this fight. So obviously Mike Tyson, in his prime, fought at heavyweight. He's one of the best heavyweights of all time. Certainly not the best heavyweight of all time, but he's up there. There's no doubt about it. Now, when we talk about boxing GOAT lists, and boxing's different than any other sport, obviously, with different weight classes. And so boxing GOAT lists are completely different than any other sport, and there's more variation. I mean, I just did some quick research, and you can find Mike Tyson on the GOAT lists anywhere from 10 to 90. I mean, it's just somewhere in between. And with different weight divisions and all those kind of things, you can dispute a lot of different things, and it's really hard to argue. I mean, even when me and Jackson go through the pound-for-pound things in MMA and in boxing, these are hard things to argue with guys in different weight classes. It's just really hard to tell. We can be clear on this. Mike Tyson, it's quite rare to say he's a top 10 boxer of all time. So that's the first narrative that we're just going to break. Some people, I mean, obviously, there's no doubt about it. Mike Tyson is one of those names. It is maybe Muhammad Ali 1, but then Mike Tyson 2. When it just comes to names in the history of boxing, those are the names. Everybody knows those names. Whether you're a boxing fan, whether you're a sports fan, whether you've never watched a boxing fight before, you probably know Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson. Beyond that, you might not know anyone. For someone who lives right now, Floyd Mayweather probably comes next. But, I mean, there's so many names out there. When it comes to actually the best fighters of all time, it's quite rare to put Mike Tyson in the top 10. Now, that doesn't have much to do with this fight. But there's this narrative that Mike Tyson was just invincible. And in his prime, it certainly seemed like he was. But this is a guy who, when he retired 20 years ago, was going through it and losing fights and not looking good. That was 20 years ago. So here we are in 2024, and he's fighting. The second narrative I want to break is the narrative that there's a big weight difference in this fight. I don't think we're going to see that whatsoever. Jake Paul has said he would imagine, and we'll know more tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to get the weigh-ins. I think it's at 6 p.m. Central Time. But Jake Paul has said that he will be weighing in around 224 pounds. Now, it's incredibly hard to know with Mike Tyson, but I can tell you this. He fought an exhibition match against Roy Jones Jr. 4 years ago and weighed in at 220. So it might feel like Mike Tyson's the bigger figure in this fight. Mike Tyson's never been tall. He's only 5'10", and Jake is 6'1". So we're talking, and I think Mike will weigh in more, if not significantly more. I don't have a number that I'm even going to guess that he'll weigh in at. But I think him and Jake's weights are going to be a lot closer than people imagine. And Jake has 3 inches in height, and he has, I forget exactly, maybe 7 in reach. So that's a big difference, and the weight difference isn't as big as people think in this fight. So that's the second narrative that I wanted to expose. There's not this big weight difference going on in this fight that people have to worry about. And the third thing I want to expose is the records between these two, especially for Jake and who Jake is and who he's fought and what that means. And then on the other side, Mike Tyson and what his record is and what his career actually looked like. And not just the blazing prime, knock everybody out Mike Tyson, but the Mike Tyson that didn't look near as good 20 years ago. And here we are in 2024. So let's start with Jake Paul. This guy has fought 11 times. He has 10-1. He hasn't just fought one boxer, and he hasn't just fought 2. He's fought 3 real boxers. Okay, we'll go over that. But let's start with the start of his career. And this is the Jake Paul that, in my opinion, it seems like most people know. For the casual combat sports fan, and I won't even say that, for the casual sports fan who's tuning into this fight, not even the combat sports fan, in my opinion, they remember hearing that Jake Paul was fighting and knocking out old washed MMA guys. And then I would say past Anderson Silva just haven't heard anything. So this is a guy who's fought 11 times. He's 10-1. And I'll just come out and say, and this is an undisputed fact. He is in fantastic shape. He is a really good boxer, especially for the point in his career that he started, the age in which he started. Most of the guys he's fighting started boxing when they were very young. He is knocking guys out that he started boxing 20 years after. And so I just want to roll through his career quick. So he fought Gibb first. Easy, first round knockout. Okay, that was the influencer scene. And then he fought a former basketball player, Nate Robinson, brutally knocked him out in the second round. And so at this point, it was still, hasn't fought a real fighter, right? Third fight, Ben Askren, the first real fighter he's fought. I remember at this point thinking, oh my gosh, a real fighter? He's got no shot. And this was on Thriller, I believe. I remember Snoop Dogg was on the call. I remember watching this fight. This was his third fight against Ben Askren. Now, Ben Askren's he was a UFC fighter, but he was a wrestler. Okay, so you have to take that into consideration. And you can see the weight in which this took place. This was at 191. So we'll keep an eye on that. But this was a first round knockout. Easy knockout for Jake Paul. Okay, now he fights Tyron Woodley. UFC fighter also. Better striker than Ben Askren. At the same age as Ben Askren. Okay, so an older MMA fighter, but a combat sports fighter nonetheless. Goes to split decision, or goes to unanimous decision, wins by split decision, or goes the distance, wins by split decision in the goes all 8 rounds, calls for a rematch, and then gets his most brutal knockout. Brutally knocks out Tyron Woodley in the 6th round of their rematch. So he gets revenge there. Now he fights Anderson Silva, another old MMA star, but a guy who was strictly known for his striking in MMA. This was a pure boxer. No wrestling with Anderson Silva, a pure boxer in MMA. So I remember at this point thinking people, he can't beat this guy. This is a pure striker. And by the way, the Jake we saw in this fight is nowhere near the Jake that we have today. Okay, so he beats Anderson Silva, a boxer, a guy who spent his entire career boxing. He beats him by unanimous decision in 8 rounds. Then fights Tommy Fury, the brother of Tyson Fury. This fight was at 184. This was overseas, and he lost via split decision. There's an argument that can be had that he won this fight. I personally think he lost the fight, but it was a very close fight. And Tommy Fury is a guy who's been boxing since he was young, and he is a very, very polished fighter. Now, some people would say, but what about his fight against KSI? People think KSI was robbed against Tommy Fury, and that Tommy Fury should have lost to KSI. I fall into that camp. I think KSI won that fight. KSI, I don't see him to be a great boxer, but KSI had a magical game plan for Tommy Fury and fights a really, really hard style that Tommy Fury couldn't do much against. He still eked out the win in the judges' eyes. Tommy Fury is a real boxer, and Jake, I think if they fought now, I would pick Jake to win. I think Jake is a lot better, and I don't know if Tommy Fury is any better. I don't think he is. And that was an incredibly close fight against a very, very, very real boxer. As real as it gets, okay? Now Nate Diaz beats him by unanimous decision. Nate Diaz, another older UFC guy, okay? But if you guys pay attention to combat sports, you know that Nate Diaz just fought Jorge Masvidal this summer. Did very well. He looked very good in a pure boxing match, and Masvidal looked good as well, but Diaz won it, and he looked very good. And Jake Paul beat him, nearly knocked him out. I think it was in the 8th round. I think it was a left hook to the head, and he dropped Diaz. So that was a fantastic fight. And then Jake says, okay, I'm tired of this. Tired of fighting MMA guys and all these people saying that, I can't beat a real boxer. So he fights another real boxer, Andre August. This was in Florida, I believe. It should say it on here somewhere. Yeah, it was in Orlando. There's only a couple thousand people there, small arena. He says, I just want to build it up now. I want to become a world champion. I'm done fighting these guys. I'm going to become a world champion. So he fights this guy, Andre August, a professional amateur boxer, and absolutely obliterates him. I mean, just a massive uppercut sends Andre August to outer space. It was absolutely incredible. So beats Andre August, and then he goes to Puerto Rico and fights Ryan Borland. It was a crazy night where just a lot of crazy stuff happened that night. But Amanda Serrano, who was the co-main event, her opponent, I forget exactly what happened. Her opponent couldn't fight anymore, and so she didn't get to have her fight. But Jake still fought and won in the first round against Ryan Borland by TKO. Okay, another real boxer. So he fights Andre August, Ryan Borland, two very real boxers. And if you see the weight there, we're up to 200 pounds now. Okay, down here we were in the 80s, in the 90s. We're up to 200 pounds now. Okay, so just that's important when we talk about the Mike Tyson fight. With Jake saying he's going to be in at 224. So then he fights Ryan Borland, and then he's going to fight Mike Tyson July 20. Mike Tyson has the ulcer flare-up, and so here comes Michael Perry. Michael Perry, better known as Mike Perry, BKFC star. Okay, what is the BKFC? It is an MMA organization in which it is striking only. You cannot wrestle. You cannot throw leg kicks. You cannot throw knees, anything on the lower half. Nope, none of that. Okay, boxing with bare fists. Boxing with bare fists. And it is a violent organization. And Mike Perry is the best BKFC fighter there is. He's a former UFC star. So he is a guy who is very tough. Very tough. And all he does is box. It's just bare knuckle boxing. Okay? And he fights Mike Perry. Mike Perry, he looked very good. You're going to see 6-round TKO. He looked very good. Most other guys, he would have knocked him out. Mike Perry is one of the toughest son of a guns I've ever seen in my life. And so Mike Perry hung around and made it close. But Jake is a dog, and Jake should have knocked him out before, but Mike Perry's just so tough. If you watch the fight, you know what I'm talking about. Ends up getting rid of Mike Perry in the 6th round, okay? And now we're getting the Mike Tyson fight. So that's Jake Paul. He's 10-1. So this narrative that he hasn't fought much is wrong. He's got 11 pro fights now. This narrative that he hasn't fought a boxer is wrong. He's fought 3 boxers. And so you're going to continue to hear that he's only fought washed, old MMA wrestlers. Not true. He fought Anderson Silva, who was a striker in MMA. He fought 3 boxers, Tommy Fury, Andre August, Ryan Borland. He fought Michael Perry, who is in his prime right now in a bare-knuckle boxing organization. Okay? So there's a big difference between Nate Robinson and Ben Askren and what he's doing now. And there's a huge difference in how he's looked then and now. So do not let anybody tell you different. Okay, this is an 8-round fight against Mike Tyson. And it's 2-minute rounds. I'm not that worried about the stamina for him. He looks, and he just passes the eye test too, by the way. It's exciting and it's fun, and there's early knockouts, but he passes the eye test. And when he's been pushed, he looked good. The Nate Diaz fight, he had to go all 10 rounds. He looked good and sharp. The Mike Perry fight, he had to go 6 out of the 8 rounds when he didn't expect to. He looked good and sharp. He looked really good. So he passes the eye test. Okay, there's a few nitpicky things you can have, but he picked up boxing really late, so that's just going to happen. But he has a fantastic uppercut. He has a really good jab that he's learned how to just sit behind it and just jab guys to death. And he has a deadly, deadly, deadly left hook. A really, really good left hook. But uppercut and left hook are his 2 killer punches. He's learning better how to go to the body throughout fights and understanding what kind of damage that can do, especially later in fights. This is a good boxer. Passes the eye test. He's quick. He's plenty big for this fight. And he has the experience for this fight. Now, he hasn't fought anyone this big before. but he has a distinct quickness advantage over Mike Tyson in this fight. Don't be fooled. You're going to see training clips of quick Mike Tyson. He has a great quickness advantage and a reach advantage. And if he really wants, he could just jab him to death. We saw Mike Tyson fight in 2020. Guys, so everyone's asking this big question of, are we still going to get the old Mike Tyson? Does he still look that? No. We don't have to wonder. We saw it in 2020. He fought Roy Jones Jr., and he did not look very good. It was body shots. Granted, it was an exhibition, but he was not the same guy, really, in any phase. There was no point in that fight where he said, that's the guy I remember watching. It's not there. So it can look like it's there in the sparring and the training, in the highlight videos that you're seeing on your social media feed, but it is not there. We saw it 4 years ago. Heck, we saw it 20 years ago. It wasn't there. There was no flashes of it. There was no nothing. Okay, so I want to get rid of that narrative right now. On the other side, we look at Mike Tyson's record. He's 50-6 all time. He's been knocked out 5 times. I've talked to multiple people who think Mike Tyson is undefeated. That is not true. Okay? This is a guy who struggled at the end of his career. And why is that important? Because he's 20 years after the end of his career. Okay? So let's look. Now, I'm not taking away what he did here at all. Okay? Dominant. Like, in his prime, as good as we've seen. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. I can't take that away from him. He loses to Buster Douglas in the fight that he wasn't supposed to lose. Buster Douglas was just a journeyman at this point. He wasn't that good. And he loses by KO to Buster Douglas. If you haven't seen the ESPN 30 for 30 on that, check it out. It's really good. Okay? Gets back on the winning streak. Loses to Evander Holyfield first time, and then loses with the ear biting. And then has a no contest here. Another no contest here. And then to end his career, we're seeing 2002 here. He lost by KO. Then he wins by KO. Then in 2004, he loses by KO. And then in 2005, he loses to Kevin McBride. And that's when he sat in there and he said, I don't have it anymore. I don't want to disrespect the sport. I can't do it anymore. That was in 2005. Okay. He didn't have it then. He didn't have it in his exhibition in 2020. And I don't see him having it here. I hate to just throw some doom on the party going on. But I would be very surprised if we saw something different, okay? I mean, this is not the way you want to end your career at all. And he knew it, and he got out. So, that's Mike Tyson. That's the real Mike Tyson. Really, really good at times. Struggled at the end of his career. Was inactive at times, right? So that's who Jake Paul is, and that's who Mike Tyson is. I want to break the narrative that might be going around. Again, I can't stress it enough. We saw Mike Tyson 4 years ago. It's not dominant. It's not the same guy. I can see it with my 2 eyes. I don't need stats to tell me. I don't need any of that. It's obvious. I'm afraid that we're going to see that in the worst way on Friday. I'm really excited for this event, don't get me wrong, but I am afraid that we're going to see that. And there's a reason people coming to this fight are extremely worried about Mike Tyson's health. And it's not just to throw a damper on Jake Paul's party because people hate Jake Paul, and they do. And part of it is why they're doing it. But they're also worried for Mike Tyson because they know he's not favored in this fight. By the way, minus 190 for Jake is generous to Mike Tyson. I think it should be more for Jake. There's a reason Jake is favored, and there's a reason people are worried for Mike Tyson's health. Okay? I just want everyone to understand that. So I wanted to come on here and break the narratives a little bit on exactly who is Jake Paul? What has he been doing? Is he just this YouTuber guy that I heard about that's been fighting washed guys, or what is he doing? So I hope that answers people's question on what is he doing? What has Mike Tyson done over the last 20 years? What have I missed out on? But that is all for now. We're going to hit you guys with a preview for this fight, and obviously for the UFC 309 bout against John Jones and Stipe Miocic this week. I cannot wait for all the combat sports that we're going to see this weekend. It's going to be a great weekend. But for now, I am Austin Ullman, and this is Fight Talk.